I'm back with Immanuel Wier. He's an assistant pastor at the Rainbow Community Church in Vancouver. The Bible, both the Old and the New Testament, but particularly the Old Testament, have very explicit passages that seem to portray homosexuality as a sin against God. How do you reconcile that as a Christian?
Well, when you carefully examine the passages, and I believe there's about 6 specific ones that a lot of people like to use.
Right.
We like to call them clobber passages because
Right.
that's how they're often used. It's often taken out of context. And to illustrate, for example, in the Old Testament and the New Testament, God talks about what he doesn't deem approved in the Christian principled life, both for heterosexuals and for homosexuals. As a matter of fact, there are more denunciations over heterosexual sex.
Sure, but I mean, it's very clear. Man should not lie down with man the way he lies down with woman.
Right.
I mean, there's not a lot of reading between the lines there.
Yeah, that's the one in Leviticus. Again, as I often when I teach the Bible, I always encourage people to read in context. Now, I mean, that one, the one in Romans, the one in Corinthians, the context has always been lust. It has always been in the context of outside of marriage, which is the same for heterosexual community. If you look in that famous passage of Leviticus, the one you talk about man should not lie down with man, the entire chapter is actually looking at a man and his wife.
Right. It's using sexuality for pleasure without procreation.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and even aside from procreation, it's talking about men and their wives, and then this one about a man and a man. Now, in that culture, most men would have been married to their wives. So if you're married to a woman or a wife and you're having sex on the side with a man, it's prohibited. And people do that in many cultures today too. And God is saying that this is not acceptable.
In the Middle East a lot.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's a different principle. Romans chapter 1 is another one. That verse is talking about idolatry. And it's using lust amongst other things. People making, whether it's idols or whether it's pleasure, their God. And so the context is often used as homosexuality. Now, if a heterosexual person was filled with lust and made sex their God, does that mean it wouldn't apply to them? Well, of course it would.
Right.
So the point there is, again, lust and not homosexuality.
Now, Jesus himself never mentioned homosexuality, but Paul, the apostle, specified it as a sin, didn't he?
Well, when he talks about it in 1 Corinthians, again, it's in that Corinthian era, during that time period, there was temple prostitution. It talks about men who are kept for unnatural purposes. The term in, for example, the NIV uses homosexual, but that never existed in the Greek. They didn't have any such term. They talked about men who are kept for unnatural purposes, and then men who use such services. So prostitution, whether male or female, was an unacceptable practice, and it was the norm of the day at that time.
Right. Well, we just have a minute left, but I'd love to get your quick thoughts on gay marriage within the church, and particularly the concern that a lot of critics of gay marriage put that, if you allow that, you're going to allow polygamy, and sort of the list goes on. How do you respond to those sorts of concerns?
Well, I think the union between two people is quite different.
Do you support gay marriage?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm married, with my husband, 9 years. And absolutely. When God, you hear people talk about the institute of marriage, and in the Bible, really it wasn't an institute, it was about a relationship between two human beings coming together. And it is we humans who have institutionalized marriage since then. So, polygamy goes on in other parts of the world. And I don't believe that allowing two people who wish to get married and have union, especially, and making it sacred in any way jeopardizes other people. People make their choices as what they'll do.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You can find out more about Pastor Wier's congregation by visiting rainbowcommunitychurch.ca. If you want to hear your ideas for stories and interviews in the future, we'll tell you how you can be in touch with us after this quick break.